welcome back to another episode of The Prosperous Empath. Y'all, I am so excited to share this episode with you all today. I recorded this episode several months ago with our guest, and I've been talking about it ever since. I think I've shared about it on the podcast previously. And I chose this episode for today in particular, and I'll share more about the topic and our guest in a moment. But the second reason I'm excited for today's episode is because today is my birthday. And when I thought about what I wanted to talk about on the podcast on my birthday, this topic felt just so relevant. And we're going to be talking all about intuition, which I'm sure you read in the title. But before we dive in, I wanted to share a little bit about my journey over this past year with you all. This year's been pretty seismic for me in terms of change. My husband and I, we moved up to Cambridge, Massachusetts after having lived in Washington, D.C. for a decade. We made that move, a year ago, June now, which is wild. We got married last October. We sold our home in Maryland earlier this winter. And that's just on the personal front. On the business front, I rebranded my business during this just whole year-long journey, including launching the podcast. In doing that, we brought on a team of coaches. In my private practice, I've actually been feeling into this possibility, this idea of shrinking my one-on-one coaching practice and more directly supporting clients through the Unbounded Mastermind, which is a huge shift for me. And we've also made some incredibly delicious and aligned shifts in the mastermind, which have just been amazing. And I've totally been loving. At this point, I've been running the mastermind for 4 years and, we've made so many iterations and learnings over the years, but these ones just felt like hell yeses. So first of all, I brought on a former client and mastermind alum, Laura Klein-Taylor, as a co-coach in the mastermind, which has just been so great for our participants to have more support and more focused eyes and ears on their process. Another big change is that we shifted the mastermind from being a cohort-based model to allowing enrolling admissions, which has just been such an amazing shift because what I noticed is that when there was this cohort model, there was this start and stop of each community, and each group really had to go through the team development stages of forming, storming, norming, and performing, if you're familiar with team development, which is great, but it also just kind of took away from jumping into a fully formed community with a thriving culture. And so by shifting from a cohort-based model to enrolling admissions, now we have this amazing opportunity to welcome new members into an ongoing structure, which already has a foundation of authenticity, depth, self-leadership, support. It's just been so lovely. And that was absolutely intuitively led. It's just been such a big year in so many ways. And I'm not going to lie, all of these changes have not been comfortable. Some have been incredibly uncomfortable, which typically big change is, right? But there's one thing that's made all of these changes so much more natural and easeful, and that has been the willingness to be led by my intuition. Truly, honing my intuition has been so integral to my success in business because truly, when we build our businesses as the full expression of who we are, that's when we find our aligned path. Not when we're following someone else's framework or copying someone else's business model or following someone or some business coach's direction and advice, which, I hate. But listen, I get it. As entrepreneurs, we so often wish that someone would tell us what to do, but that's just not how it works. We have to develop our intuition and be willing to be led by it. And this has been just such a huge area of focus with clients of late. It's been a huge part of my journey. I've been talking about it more here on the podcast. And so, for all these reasons and so many more, I'm so excited to introduce our guest, Bonnie Casamassima, to you today because she's legit an expert on intuition. Bonnie is a researcher, an educator. She's a highly sensitive, intuitive empath. She's the founder of Intuitive by Nature, and she's dedicated to nurturing people's joy-driven lives through fostering their intuitive connection. I love that. Her support focuses on primary research, one-on-one intuitive readings, and research-rooted speaking engagements. She's a former professor holding an MFA in design from Savannah College of Art and Design, focusing on environmental psychology and biophilic design. Gosh, I hope I said that right, Bonnie. And she has a BS in interior design from the University of Tennessee at Knoxville. She has experience in mediumship, and she has done a shaman training, and she is just an incredible guest. I think having a background as a professor, she really knows how to articulate her points well. I know you're going to love today's episode. We talk all about how to hone your intuition, what support and practices will help develop your intuition. So without further ado, let's jump in. Hello and welcome to the Prosperous Empath Podcast, designed especially for empaths and highly sensitive entrepreneurs just like you who are committed to achieving holistic success. I'm your host, Catherine Wood, Master Certified Coach, author, mastermind leader, and founder of Unbounded Potential, a boutique coaching firm for empathic entrepreneurs. I'm on a mission to bring empathy back into the world of business. Each episode will focus on achieving more by doing less through leveraging empath-friendly leadership practices, boundaries, rituals, and systems, all the while continuing to care deeply about ourselves, others, and the world around us. If you are committed to joyful living and running a conscious business, but amassing wealth while doing so, proving that you can have both in a society that tells you you can't, then you are in the right place. Join me here each week to find out how. Be sure to subscribe and leave a review so you won't miss an episode. Plus, you'll find all the show notes and helpful resources over at unbounded-potential.com. Well, Bonnie, I am thrilled to have you on the show. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Why don't you just kick us off by sharing a little bit about who you are and a bit of your story?
Yeah, absolutely. So hello, everybody. My name is Bonnie Casamassima, and it's such a joy to be here with you, Catherine, and an honor to be alongside those listeners that are joining in. So hello to everyone out there. In a nutshell, I work with the research and application of helping people to connect with their intuition and their intuitive abilities. The specifics of what that looks like is I had worked in the research worlds as a professor for years and years, and also corporate America for years and years, and started meditating for stress reduction. And one day, when I was minding my own business as a very analytical person, I started receiving really clear visuals in my mind's eye during meditation. And it scared the crap out of me, quite frankly. And that really led to a I guess it's almost 8 years now, journey of really deepening my understanding of what intuition is, and kicking off my own research project where I interviewed other highly sensitive intuitives and empaths from around the world. And I'm taking all of that into supporting people either in one-on-one readings or research and speaking engagements to look at how we can pull people into using their intuition into their everyday modern lives.
Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh, I have so many follow-up questions. Well, let's see. Let's just start at the beginning. So, would you be willing to define intuition and what it means to you?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. For intuition, the way within the work that I do and how I support people is it's looking at how we receive information beyond what we often let our five or six senses experience. So when we're looking at intuition, we can look at it from a broad range of a deep knowing. I can't really explain it, but there's just this gut feeling I'm supposed to take this position, or I'm supposed to reach out and ask for a date with this person. I don't know why, right? All the way to receiving visuals or things like in meditation, in our mind's eye, or with our eyes open, or hearing things beyond what are physically in the room or what we can see with our 3D reality. So it's really looking at that broader lens of information that we are connected to on a deep energetic level. And when we look at fields such as quantum physics, we start to really understand that we're deeply connected to so much more than we often have let ourselves experience. So that's how I would define intuition.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we can dive a little bit deeper, however, it would be supportive for sure.
Well, I would love to dive deeper, and like for context, I think I'd love to share a little bit of my story because,
Mhm.
you know, I come from a very analytical background. I'm a former senior economist for the government. Like I think in data and numbers. And I think for me personally, I resisted my intuition for so many years because for me, intuition meant being woo woo, which I don't like that word. I consider myself deeply intuitive and spiritual, and I don't like the word woo woo.
Yeah.
And but for me, like being intuitive has often meant pulling tarot cards or going to a psychic or being able to talk to ghosts, like just kind of all these terms which felt very I don't know, just being from New England, growing up near Salem, near the Salem witch trials, like they talk about lots of ghosts in New England. Like for me, like that is what being intuitive often meant. So I think I resisted kind of tuning in with my own intuitive knowing, and you use that term, and that's something I say a lot. So how do you distinguish the levels of intuition and the ways in which people connect and access their own?
So thank you for sharing that there was a resistance to connecting with your intuition. I so resonate with that. Coming from a very analytical background myself, I saw, and I think often in society, it can be one or the other. Are you tuned in to your inner knowing, your intuition, or your analytical reasoning? And in my background, at least, having gone through the corporate ladder and all the schooling, it was very heavily prioritized. You put the emphasis on your brain and your thinking, right? And to answer your specific question of how do we really define or distinguish intuition from those that have the ability to see ancestors or spirits or ghosts, to the range of maybe really tuning into the deep knowing. For me and the research that I've been honored to conduct, I include all of it in the definition. And the reason for that is because, one, we want to create a really open, safe space for whatever each person's experience is, and acknowledge it goes back to that definition of information that we're connected to beyond what we have been maybe conditioned to let ourselves experience. So, for an example, I'm very empathic. So, when I was a researcher and a professor in the classroom, I can feel other people's emotions and I can sense, kind of read the room for, okay, the person, this, Sally in the back left corner. Okay, she's needing a little bit more of this. Okay, Tom in the front right corner, he's needing a little bit more of this. And then as a professor, I was able to very quickly kind of course correct how I was sharing the information, sharing the lecture, because of being able to be tuned in to the emotions, the feelings of others in the room. At the time, I just thought, oh, everybody can do these things, right? Everybody senses how somebody else is feeling, or even can sense if there was an argument in a room when you walk into the room and nobody's there, and the argument happened a few minutes ago, right? You can still feel, I could still feel that in my body, right? So I share that to say, really to honor what intuition means for you, and to hold space that it can mean being able to see things with people's eyes open, all the way to really tuning into those deep empathic feelings of connecting with someone else. Because at the end of the day, what we're seeing within research is it's all energy, and we're all connected to it. I can dive deep into it, but to keep it just at a really high level, to hold space for that, that's how I would respond to that.
Yeah, I love that answer. And thank you for speaking to my resistance.
Oh, thank you.
Because that's exactly it, right? Like, that's just exactly what it is. And sometimes we can analyze it, or, or just we can get stopped in our own judgment versus just calling a spade a spade.
Absolutely. And to hold so much compassion for yourself. Oftentimes, not always, right? There are cultures around the world that are deeply ingrained with this interconnectivity in their everyday lives, right? And for myself, and growing up in a really analytical trajectory, going to undergrad and then grad school, and trying to climb the corporate ladder, and being a professor, all the things, there was this this tendency to not trust what my internal wisdom was telling me, to fight through it. I can sleep when I'm dead. I need to just keep working to achieve, and turning off that internal navigation system in the process was not only the norm, it was celebrated, right? It's celebrated with how busy we are, with how much work we have to do, with how exhausted we are. And building a relationship, or rekindling our relationship with our intuition and our intuitive abilities, can very much be a journey of deep internal listening, deep self-trust, and deep awareness of, okay, self-doubt is kicking in. Where is this coming from? Self-judgment is kicking in. Where is this coming from? When in my gut, this decision to work with this client or not work with this client, or go on this date or not go on this date, is so loud and clear in my body. But then in a split instance, my analytical reasoning of what I should do, quote unquote, kicks in, and we can stop listening to that internal wisdom. So I share that to say that the journey of reconnecting with our intuition can very much be one of tuning in and building in our self-trust, and seeing if there is judgment and doubt, where is that story coming from? Is it from society? Is it from social conditioning? And is it mine to hold anymore? And checking in with what's most aligned for you from there.
Gosh, I so appreciate that explanation. On the podcast lately, we've been talking a lot about this idea of dismantling internalized capitalism. And you spoke to it, this idea of like being busy and going on to the next thing and the next goal. And I so appreciate the reminder that connecting with our intuition and our own intuitive knowing is just one more tool in our toolkit that we, particularly as empaths and highly sensitive folks, have to choose a different path, to not choose the path of internalized capitalism and grind culture and hustle mentality, but as a way to connect with our own inner guidance, our own choosing what's right for us. And I also heard in what you shared just the reminder that, as empaths and pleasers and typically highly ambitious folks, like, we're very practiced in doing what society says, or doing what we think we should do, or being perfectionistic in our tendencies, and for good reason. Like, something I always like to remind my clients about imposter syndrome is that, typically the higher achiever you are, the louder the imposter syndrome you have, because they go hand in hand. So just that reminder that connecting with our intuition is another outlet, like, that's just so empowering, so freeing to hear.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you so much for reflecting that. And I've been loving the content on how are we dismantling internalized capitalism, because I think that very much is one of the pieces where I just thought that was the way I was supposed to be. And the more that I really tune into, what is that inner voice telling me in meditation? What are my body sensations telling me to when I walk into this room versus that room? What are the sensations I'm experiencing really telling me for my most deepest me? And how can I listen to that as the driver? It's a journey for sure. But I couldn't agree more with you that looking at intuition and our connection with that as a very powerful tool to nurture our deepest intent, to nurture our deepest desires as we step fully into our most authentic selves with that.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's shift gears, because I, as a data nerd, am dying to hear about some of your data and research. So, could you just share a little context about the study that you've been doing on intuition, so we have a little background about what it is we're going to dive into?
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. So at a high level, the topic of the study was deepening our understanding of the highly sensitive, empathic, intuitive connection. So it sought just that. And the framework used for those researchers out there, a grounded theory framework. And it's one that Brene Brown uses that really seeks to ask people their lived experiences first, and then analyze, are there any patterns that we're seeing with this? Are there any resources that were supportive for people on their journey, connecting with their intuition or their intuitive abilities? Were there things that were hindering it? Right. So the process looked at conversations with 50 people from around the world who were deeply connected to their intuition, to their empathic nature, and then asked them 5 open-ended questions on their journey. Can you tell me how you would describe it for you? What is intuition for you? How does it come strongest? Were there any things that were positive, or anything that was supportive, or anything that hindered your experience in connecting with your intuition, etc.? And what I thought was really fascinating, so to kind of talk more about the nuts and bolts of it, is I was the primary researcher. And then I consulted with someone to help with the data analysis, because I wanted to be very clear in acknowledging I'm a highly sensitive, intuitive empath. So by nature, right, I have inherent biases, right? I'm going to have those. I want to bring all those to the surface, but how can we make sure we're looking at this process from a really rigid, academically rigorous protocol in understanding that? So I hired someone to help with the data analysis. We both analyzed the data separately, and then we came together to analyze it, went back separately and then came back together for a final, okay, this is what we're seeing as those patterns. So I share all that to say it was a very stringent process. And one thing that was really eye-opening was one, how quickly we got to our goal of 50 interviews. I was thinking maybe I would put the call out there and maybe 4 or 5 people would respond. Because that's often what can happen in the research. Like that's why we get extra credit when we're in college to do those studies, right? If we're in a psychology class, there's extra credit to try to get people to respond to surveys because sometimes it could be almost like pulling teeth, right?
Oh my gosh, Bonnie, I think I sent your interview request to like 10 friends within the first 30 minutes of seeing it.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you so much for that and for your support with that. And Catherine, what really was motivating and energizing is, I was obviously interested in what are the findings with this. I had my own lived experience. I had those that I was in trainings with and mentorships with, but really from this, research and academically rigorous protocol, what are we finding? So I put the call out there and thinking I'd come back to my inbox the next day to maybe 3 or 4 applications. And I opened my inbox to over 30 applications.
Wow.
People wanting to share their story, connecting with their intuition, people wanting this information to be available to others on their own journey, connecting with it. So that's an overview of the research. And during the process, I was able to interview doctors, therapists, CPAs. I had a prison warden, coaches, etc., as well as healers and psychics and mediums on their journey, connecting with their intuition to really understand what is it for them and how are they pulling this as a support tool for their everyday modern lives.
Mm-hmm. I so appreciate hearing a little bit more about who was surveyed, just the diversity across industries and occupations, because it's true. I think in some industries like yours and mine, it's more natural and easy to self-identify as intuitive, empathic, highly sensitive, even potentially introverted. And then for these other industries, which are less kind of driven by self-awareness and self-reflection, it can be more unnatural or, I guess, just clear to see those qualities and to self-identify. So I love that you have so much diversity. So basically, you're an expert in intuition, which is hopefully what I hope my producer dubs our episode.
I hope that. Wow, oh my God, what an honor to have that title. I am a very passionate person here to help share experiences in an academically rigorous way. So yeah, sure. What an honor. What an honor. I'm so grateful for those that join the research and thank you for sharing it with your community. And that really the passion is, wow, how can we take these sacred experiences, these sacred stories, and share them in a way that really honors people's lived experiences? And what we're finding in the research, how can we use that as a support tool for others along their journey, regardless of what that journey is for them, really meeting them where they are?
Will you share with us some of the findings, perhaps some of your the most potent findings and the ones that surprised you most?
Oh my gosh, what a great question. Absolutely. I'm going to sit with that one for a second.
As we do.
Absolutely. As a self-identified introvert and highly sensitive, intuitive empath. Absolutely. On that note, those that had really nurtured their intuition and their empathic and intuitive abilities. And I want to make the distinction that intuition and empath are, they're very closely related, though separate in definition, just to share that. So intuition, a way we can think about it is almost that the overarching word, and deep empathy, deep connection, maybe emotion to emotion, would be an area in the research, at least, of how we're really understanding a way that it can come through for people. So I just wanted to kind of share a little bit of that, but I got to watch out because the research for me will, I will nerd out. So watch out. Some of the things that we are seeing in the research, and we spoke to the first one a little bit earlier, in that intuitive information and insights and connection can come in a very wide range of ways for people. Sometimes people expressed it as a feeling. I don't know, I get tingles, I get goosebumps when my body knows I'm supposed to say yes to this client or say yes to this partnership or buy this house. I can't explain why, but I got goosebumps all over and I just knew I had to do it. We're seeing in the research that information can come in all of our senses. And some people experience all of them. Some people experience a few a little bit stronger than others. So they can see things in their mind's eye, such as in meditation, visuals, sight, taste, sound, touch, etc. An example, one of the participants shared that she knew that she was deeply connected with her mother who had passed away. And the way that it came strongest for her was she would smell roses in the room, and there would be no physical roses present. Like, she would open all the windows, she would look, and no roses anywhere. And she would smell a very strong smell of roses, which were her mother's favorite flower, just to give an example of what this included. So that was one of the big ones, is it comes a lot of different ways, and all the way to deep inner knowings. I've looked at 20 houses. I can't describe why, but this is the one for me. And everything goes smoothly. You follow it, it's aligned. The second thing that really stood out to us is the why behind people wanting to deepen their connection with their intuition and their intuitive abilities. So not only does it come in a wide range of ways, but those that had developed an intentional relationship with it had expressed that their decision making was much clearer. Their quality of life became much more aligned. Anecdotally, they were very joyful, very happy, very alive is a way that I would describe that. I want to hold a lot of space that these are the people that had developed an intentional relationship with it, had really embodied that. Along that journey, we did see those that got very overwhelmed with these abilities. Sometimes it can feel like it's a whisper, and sometimes it feels like you're at a Rolling Stones concert, right? And to be highly sensitive and have these experiences that feel like, the volume is turned all the way up, it can be really debilitating. So along the journey, holding a lot of empathy and compassion for making sure that you're nurturing yourself with that, and not turning to things that, choices that intentionally numb everything because it numbs this one ability. Yeah. So those are two of the big ones, is it comes in a wide range of ways, and those that connected with it were very passionate about seeing it as almost a superpower in their day-to-day. And then the final one that I'll share is how so many people in the open-ended questions voluntarily said how they wish this information was available to them as they were connecting on their own journey with it, especially when they felt connected to these abilities as a child, and then around teenage years kind of shut them down, and then reconnected with them in their most often kind of 30s to 40s is what we're seeing with the patterns.
Oh, that's so fascinating.
Yeah. Yeah.
So most of the people that you interviewed realized in hindsight that they were intuitive at a much younger age and then disconnected only to reconnect in adulthood?
We saw I want to be cautious with the word most, just on the research side, but we saw a very clear pattern of that. And most often of those that expressed remembering a deep connection with this deep inner knowing, as children. I'll share an example. One person shared that she goes, I was an only child, and I would go out into the woods and I would just sit, and I never felt alone. Like, I felt an interconnection with everything that was around me. And she said, I'd forgotten about that until I was an adult and worked to reconnect with it. So, so yes, there was definitely, and where the ability to shut down the information, that intuitive connection, that really that connection with our inner selves and the deep wisdom that we have all around us, is that fear of judgment, that fear of what people are going to think. Am I going to be ridiculed, disowned for sharing this openly? And not always, but most often, we did see that happen strongest around teenage years, which makes a lot of sense. I know Brene Brown even talks about this. She uses the term candle blower outers of, I'm curious, have you ever been where you are, you're sharing your light, you're being your full authentic self, and you can think about it like a candle, like you've got this sacred flame that is you, that is your heart of hearts. And then for whatever reason, someone comes along and blows out your candle, right? Oftentimes that happened for those that we interviewed and those that shared that experience around their teen years. And it was in their it was in their adult life that they started to reconnect with it and reconnect with their deeper selves.
Hitting pause on this episode for just a moment to tell you about my absolutely favorite way for you to experience a taste of our work with ambitious empath entrepreneurs in our Unbounded Mastermind, the community for empath entrepreneurs to celebrate and be carried forward by each other's successes, get bespoke coaching, and supported by a sisterhood of values-aligned business besties to finally step into your quantum next level. Each month, we host an intimate, non-networking power hour within our mastermind community for you to have a behind-the-scenes experience of what it's like to be supported in our community. Join us for our next event on Monday, the 22nd of May at 12 noon Eastern Time by jumping on over to the show notes for this episode and grabbing your spot at unbounded-potential.com/podcast. Well, hearing you share that has me kind of over here thinking about my own journey with intuition. And I don't necessarily remember those teen years and how and whether I connected or became disconnected from it. But I am mindful that it was also for me in my 30s when I reconnected with my intuition. And similarly, by you, it felt like it was by accident on a meditation cushion. And the interesting thing for me was it was at a really powerful period of transition in my career. I had unaffiliated from 2 business partnerships, which took up a lot of time and energy and kind of emotional energy, right? Loving energy, anxious energy, just all of it. And I removed them and I replaced it with a meditation journey. I became certified as a Kundalini yoga instructor.
Yes.
And for our audience who doesn't know what Kundalini is, like Kundalini is, it is the yoga of science. So it's all about moving blocked energy in our body through mantra and asanas and focusing on different chakras and meridians. It's like just a very transformative yogic school of yoga, and I love it. And
It's powerful. I've done it on a practice level.
Mhm.
Powerful, powerful.
It is so powerful. And there is nothing like a Kundalini class for me, which helps me connect with my intuition. So I don't take it by to be kind of, I think it was very intentionally the consequence of me unlocking my intuition and gaining access to my own intuitive knowing while I also created so much more space for me from these other commitments, which took up a lot of my voice and energy. But it was completely by accident. It was not a conscious choice. I'm sure in hindsight, it was probably part of me probably knew that was what was next for me. But I wonder how similar that is with other people's journeys with reconnecting with their intuition.
Oh my gosh. Yes. Thank you so much for sharing that. I'm curious, you've asked me how we define intuition within the research, but for you, what is intuition for you? And then I'll answer that good question that you had.
So I love that. Thank you for asking me. For me, the way I think about intuition is I think about it as accessing our own internal knowing. So, in my body of work as an ontological coach, I relate to myself as a mirror to help my clients access more and more of what they already know to be true for themselves, and then take action in alignment with that. So for me, that's what intuition it is. It's the part of us that already knows the answers and perhaps doesn't consciously acknowledge or own it. We either suppress it or reject it or push it down. So that's what it is for me.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. I just want to shout from the rooftops. Yes. To answer your question of, how was that journey for people connecting? A pattern, I could talk all day on the different patterns, but for the sake of today's conversation, one of the things that we saw very much was people connecting with their intuition or reconnecting with their intuitive abilities very much was a series of what we've called trusting the nudges. I don't know why, just someone told me to meditate. It felt right. I'll share my own experience there. I was working 70 plus hours a week and I was so stressed. And a friend of mine recommended meditating. I was like, I don't have time for meditation. What are you talking about? And the most I could do is I sat down for a 2-minute guided meditation that I listened to on YouTube. And I had, a million thoughts in that 2 minutes, very much a racing mind. But something felt so right and so nurturing to my body. So the next day, I tried a 3-minute meditation and it felt right. And along the journey of really listening to what feels aligned and right in your body, very often we saw very much the body as our antenna for this, though it comes a lot of different ways for people, from seeing things, hearing things. One way that we want to really discern that information is intuitive information and not maybe a stress response or symptoms of things such as anxiety is really tuning into how does it feel in our bodies? Does it feel very grounded? Does it feel safe? And what we're seeing in the research is that very much resonates with what you shared with your experiences. It was kind of trusting these subtle nudges of, I don't know why, but Kundalini yoga just feels really right. So I'm going to follow a certification for it. And then in that process, this awakening occurs, or this reconnection with our intuition occurs. And even for those that shared very powerful awakening experiences, building that self-trust was an ongoing journey with it.
I just have so many thoughts of it, and I love that answer. Well, so as we kind of wrap up with nearing the end of the episode, I'd love to hear for those of us who are interested in honing our intuition and deepening it, what did you find in the research to support those on their journey?
Oh, absolutely. Thank you so much for this question. It was really a phase of trusting those nudges, trusting those subtle internal knowings, in addition to some pretty powerful experiences. It's not just about, sitting down on a silent mat. For many, it is that, and that's beautiful if that resonates with you. But the overarching theme for what was supportive for people was really listening to what was most nourishing for them. And maybe that was intuitive dance or intuitive art or roller skating while thinking about where their body wanted to move next, or a journal practice where they would start it with Dear Intuition, I would like to connect more with you. What are some ways? And just keep the pen moving, right? But it very much was an intentional practice, most often daily ish, that helped people to really connect deeply with their abilities. It's a relationship. Just like a relationship with a partner, you wouldn't go 6 months without calling them and expect them to still want to go on a date with you on Friday. Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. But those very daily mini activities to connect. So mini meaning it could be a few minutes each day, were really powerful for people connecting with their intuition.
I so appreciate the reminder of how important stillness is, like how necessary creating space is from the busy and bustle of the world around us in order to connect with our interior world. I'm thinking about my own journey, and when I became trained as a Kundalini instructor, part of our training was to do 2 40-day meditation challenges. And the first meditation challenge was 40 continuous days of an 11-minute practice, followed by 40 days of a continuous 31-minute practice. And I so appreciate my instructor because she was this small but mighty woman in her, in her second chapter in life. And she was just so clear that if we got to day 39 and we missed it, we had to start again from day one. There was no ifs, ands, or buts about it. But for me, it was that kind of rigor, that championing from her, that kind of demand for consistency and holding the practice sacred. That is what it took for me to outwin my resistance, because giving ourselves the space and the grace for that stillness, that in and of itself is a practice. Allowing ourselves to quiet down, to put down the phone, to disconnect from the dopamine hit that is the world we live in today, the fastness of social media. It is a journey even to just give ourselves permission to be still and to quiet our nervous systems. And I'm just wondering if you have any thoughts as we wrap up about, for those of us who know we're wanting to connect with our intuition on a more deep level, and yet we resist doing and being what it takes to allow an experience of greater stillness for ourselves in life. Where do we start?
Thank you again for that question. What is coming and what we're seeing in the research is allow it to be aligned with your life, wherever that is at that moment, and allow it to bring you joy, right? There are many ways to connect with our intuition. There are many tools, practices, etc. One of the things that has been shown to be really powerful is when we do things that allow us to get into a state of joy on an energetic level, a vibrational level. It feels incredible to be there. So we are subconsciously driven to do more of that. So you talked about the dopamine hits of social media, right? We're using that, but to our body's advantage by doing things that bring us joy. So looking at practices, again, consistency has shown to be really powerful. I don't say that to create another thing on someone's to-do list. I do say that to be very clear that it can be a practice of really honoring yourself, honoring your connection with your intuition and all that you're deeply supported by. And we can choose the way to do that by what brings us most joy. So maybe for you, it's walking in the woods with your incredible dogs, right? And while you're walking in the woods, you're bringing intention or a thought to your intuition. Like, dear gut feelings that I felt yesterday about working with the clients, I really appreciate you coming and sharing that with me. Could we keep this relationship going? Right. A client that I'm working with, I have a Connecting with Your Intuition mentorship. She shared that she loves roller skating. She's a business owner. She's very highly productive, all the things. And she goes, when I can just roller skate, I feel my most me. I was like, this is awesome. Let's use that as you're developing your practice to build your intuition. So look at things that nurture you. Try to do it daily ish. And again, it can be a few minutes. It's all about your intention, and do things that align with what bring you joy on an energetic level. It can attune our bodies to be much more receptive to intuitive information, intuitive downloads. And on a well-being level, it's really wonderful to feel joy. So keep following that.
This has been such a thought-provoking, brilliant conversation, Bonnie. I don't know if I realized how much medicine I would take for myself from our conversation today. And I also don't think I realized or had fully connected the dots for myself, just how much tapping into our intuition and being guided by our intuition rather than by our ego or our more and grind and hustle tendencies is connected with what this podcast is all about, right? For me, being a prosperous empath is truly redefining the terms of your success and your life's meaning on what is meaningful to you personally. And I am really taking with me from this conversation just how much intuition can guide that journey.
Yes. Oh my God.
So thank you. And I mean, sounds like you really wanted to respond to that.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing that. And it makes me think, one of the talks that I'm so honored to share with organizations is fostering your heart-led leadership through honing your intuitive connection. And what you just shared is exactly that, is how do we really look at this as a powerful resource to connect deeply with our own inner wisdom, to get in line with that heart-led leadership, and to really tune into that interconnectivity of it and shine incredibly brightly in the process with that. I'm so excited to get to share it at a women's summit coming up to a group of 100 people in the room. And I'm so excited to bring that interconnectivity for how we can pull it into our everyday modern lives. So thank you so much for sharing those ahas that you had in our conversation. It's such an honor to be here with you today.
I know our audience and listeners are going to want to delve into this research and read more. So where can they read some of the findings? And when are you going to publish your version of Brené Brown's book on on your mastery of intuition?
So 2 things there. The website where you can find more information is intuitivebynature.com. You can find information on the research. And right now we're still in the final stages. So stay tuned on the publications of that. And we are going into recording a podcast series where we're going to be sharing information about the findings. So you're going to be able to find all of that on intuitivebynature.com.
Okay. Thank you so much, Bonnie. As we wrap, what has supported you most on your journey in becoming a prosperous empath?
I love this question. Dedicating time for myself daily-ish, but daily, for me is really tuning in my meditation practice and creating that stillness for me. And then the second thing is giving myself permission to ask for support.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, those.
Such a joy. I feel like I'm just taking so much for myself from our conversation. Thank you so much for joining today.
Thank you so much. It was wonderful to be here with you.
Thank you so much for listening today to this episode of the Prosperous Empath Podcast with me, Catherine Wood. Make sure you subscribe and leave a review so you don't miss an episode and so more empaths just like you and me can find the show. As a thank you, each month, one lucky reviewer will receive a 60-minute coaching session with a member of our Unbounded Potential team. You can find all the show notes and bonus resources over at unbounded-potential.com. Thank you so much for listening and locking arms with me to bring empathy and prosperity back into the world of business.